Hello all, my name is Jacob Macdonald and we are submission number 79 for the Data for Policy conference. And today what I'm going to speak of is local data spaces for local policy research, leveraging trusted research environments for granular, secured local policy research in the age of COVID-19. So as I mentioned, my name is Jacob Macdonald. I am a research associate with the Consumer Data Research Center and the University of Liverpool. And this was really a collaborative effort between a team of researchers involving also Maurizio Gibbon from the Consumer Data Research Center at the University of London, Mark Green from the University of Liverpool, and Simon Leach from the University of Leeds. And really what we're going to focus on is local data, or leveraging as best we can localized data and trusted research environments. And we know that local policy is going to be fed by accurate, representative local data. So if we're going to be making actionable local policy decisions, we want it to be informed by data that's representative of the local area, whether that's a city, a municipality, a region. And much can be garnered from using national large-scale registries, surveys, or admin data. So although they may be national in scope, we can make use of a national registry, for example, to leverage very much the local aspect of the data, and that can help inform at local policy. However, once we start going to a very fine-grained level of spatial detail, we're going to potentially start opening things up to be inherently disclosive. So once we're looking at, personalizable or identifiable information for a person or for a retail center, for example, then we're going to be starting to require working in a special environment, in a special infrastructure where sensitive or secured data can be worked with appropriately. And this is increasingly important, especially when we think of the amount of research in the last year or so related to health and COVID-19. These are especially sensitive data. So, of course, any sorts of COVID or health data that is personally identifiable needs to be worked with in a secured environment where there's no issues of data leakages. And trusted research environments are really, the infrastructure that bridges this gap. So it's going to allow for researchers, accredited researchers, to access the secured data in a secured environment and working on their research project without any risk of data leaks or disclosiveness. And this is where the Local Data Spaces program fit in. So the Local Data Spaces pilot ran from November of 2020 to May of 2021, the end of April. And our aim was to leverage as much as we can the granular level data that we have access to in the trusted research environment. And our trusted research environment is the ONS Secured Research Service, the ONS SRS platform. So we really wanted to leverage the data sets that we had access in there for as local as possible COVID-19 and economic or related economic outcomes, especially looking or leveraging as much as possible the localized and the comparison between localities at this. So we wanted to move away as much as possible from aggregate, indicators to looking at local details on the ground as can be derived from the data sets in question. And essentially the aim is to take granular secured line level data and whether it's related to COVID-19 or the economic side of things, and generate a series of research outputs that are non-disclosive, that can be shared with local authorities and local stakeholders openly, and that are informing them on very detailed aspects of their locality, while at the same time being secure and non-disclosive in nature. And this was an active collaboration between the Joint Biosecurity Center. They provided the overall project governance and management, the Office for National Statistics, which is of course where the data was hosted. So we were working primarily with ONS data and specifically working in the ONS's trusted research environment, which is the Secured Research Service, the SRS. and then also ESRC's Administrative Data Research, ADR UK, which is where the academic researchers, myself, and the other 3 researchers were hosted. And then broadly speaking, the kind of high level workflow that we had is that the accredited researchers, myself and colleagues, would undertake the accreditation to gain access to the secured research service. And we would be going in with specific research questions that we wanted to undertake. We would work in the secured environment, accessing the range of data sets available to us, again, under the header of better understanding COVID-19 and economic recovery at the local level. So we would be working in the trusted research environment, in the secured, isolated environment with the secured and sensitive data, and conducting our research in this environment. And then we would be exporting from this environment non-disclosive research outputs, data products, and our completed work that we can share openly with local authorities and local authority stakeholders that are going to help them or help inform them on the various kind of research streams that we were looking at. And essentially this meant going from the secured line level, the granular detail, to a research output or research products that are non-disclosive, that can be shared with local authorities, and that are going to help inform on actionable local policy analysis and outcomes, again, from the COVID-19 and from the related economic outcomes. And so practically what this meant was generating for every local authority across England a series of local profiles based on the data that we had access to in the secured environment. So as the researchers, we were working in the secured environment with the data sets, and we were looking to generate a series for every local authority. So for the 300 plus local authorities, generate a series of profiles that's going to help inform them on a range of different topics, which I'll bring up next. And just to give you an idea of some of the data sets that we were working with in the SRS, of course, from the COVID-19 side of things, we had the COVID infection survey with the test and trace data, excess mortalities data. From more of the economic side of things in the SRS, there's the business structure data set, the business registry employment survey. Of course, you have your census, your labor force survey. So you really do have a wide range of data products available for you to work on in this trusted research environment. And then in addition to this, we linked in a series of open data sets to kind of help better inform or complement the secured data that we had access to. And this could involve, mid-year population estimates, for example. We had housing prices, the land registry data, geospatial indices, so access to health indicators, the IMD indicators. We had Google mobility. So it was really about kind of bringing together as many different levels or tiers of data we could to help best inform locality by locality on these different research domains. And like I said, this is just kind of a broad overview of some of the data sets. There's increasingly new and continuously new data sets being included into the SRS. And there is a data catalog available. And then also, here's a nice kind of resource available from the SRS. You can sign up for their newsletter, and they'll also mention what new data sets are available there. So these are great resources to look and see that potentially there's a sensitive or secure data set in this trusted research environment that would be very important for your local policy analysis that you could make use of. And so what we did was to start synthesizing these data sets as much as possible for every local authority, so for the 300 plus local authorities, and broadly come up with a series of 10 different reports that were themed across broad themes of the data. And these broad themes, which I'll present down here, so these were kind of brought together or informed by consultations with local authority stakeholders. At the beginning of the pilot project, we met with a variety of different local authority stakeholders to ask and to discuss what would be, from their point of view, what sort of data analytics and outputs and research products would be useful for them on the ground. And overwhelmingly things on COVID outcomes and economic recovery was very important for them. So we tried to theme across these kind of two broad streams here, a series of reports, again, that are available openly for all local authorities along these 10 different kind of broad domains. So you can see that there's each local authority would get a report on their occupational inequalities as related to COVID-19, geospatial and demographic inequalities of COVID-19. From the economic side, we kind of synthesized industry and workforce densities, regional mobility patterns, housing, and really these are all built, again, from the granular data to a kind of synthesized local profile that is non-disclosive, that is openly available, and that are being hosted on our website that I'll show at the very end, that any stakeholder or local authority user can go and download as much as they want completely free. And like I said, the profiles were generated along two main themes. So just to give you an idea of what we were able to provide for each local authority based on the granular data and the series of data sets that I brought up. So this is an example for Leeds, but again, each local authority would have their own set of these profiles. So you can see that Leeds, this is just the front page snapshot, and then the actual report is quite detailed, but each report is going to include some information, some text, the data sources, and then a series of data analytics, visualizations, data summaries based on the granular data that's going to help inform on, in this case, demographic inequalities related to COVID-19. We also have occupational inequalities. So at the local level, the local authority level, we're going to be kind of cross-referencing COVID outcomes with occupational data, geospatial inequalities in COVID. We have excess mortality inequalities and ethnic inequalities. So we're going to be breaking down at the local level for each local authority the differences in inequalities across the data sets that we have access to. And to give you an idea, again, this is just some high level. I'll provide links to where the actual reports can be downloaded at the end of this. But for example, what would be available to a local authority in their geospatial inequality packet would be a series of visualizations, data analytics, or data summaries that are going to synthesize the data related to this domain. So in terms of geospatial inequalities, we're going to be looking at how does COVID-19 relate, or what is the picture that we're getting with COVID-19 infection as that relates to other measures of geospatial inequality. So namely the index of multiple deprivation, or the internet user classification, but we can also look at measures of population density here, overcrowding and housing. So the report is going to include a series of visualizations, primarily in this case. Again, we really like to emphasize the spatial side of things. So we have a series of non-disclosive. All these reports are built using granular data, but these outputs, or these research outputs and visualizations are non-disclosive, that we can provide a summary for each local authority. So you can see here a summary of the waves of COVID infection, and how that, what picture that looks related to the index of multiple deprivation, for example. Another one that we were able to look at, and this is particularly important when we're getting to local level. Sometimes we can't necessarily cross all the data we want to, but in this case, we're able to look at multiple dimensions of COVID infection and how the infection, or the prevalence of the infection, was in different sectors of the economy or different occupations. So we wanted to look at what would be possible at a local level, locality by locality, or kind of as small as locality as possible, as non-disclosive as possible. But how does the local infection rate change compared, or how does that relate to kind of the national aggregate? So although national aggregates may be openly available, we know that some of the sub-regional patterns may differ substantially from the national aggregate. So here we're able to look at how kind of local COVID-19 prevalence deviates from the national average in terms of occupations and different sectors of the economy. Again, these non-disclosive outputs being generated based on the disclosive, the granular data that we have access to. And then we also had a series, so that's a few examples of the COVID based data sets, but we also have a series of data focusing more on the kind of economic side of things. So we have a data set looking at sector-based density and distribution of the workforce. So what type of workforce do we have? This is particularly important for the social economy, retail, hospitality, and tourism jobs, which were heavily impacted during the pandemic. We looked at human mobility, economic vulnerability. So we have surveys on the business impacts of coronavirus survey, so the BIC survey. We have specific profile on looking at the retail and the accommodation sector for each local authority. And again, this is based on the granular business registry data that we have access to in the SRS. And then we also have some data on population and housing coming from more of the open data set. And just to give you an example, again, for each report, each local authority is going to get a series of data analytics and visualizations, which are non-disclosive, but built on the disclosive granular data from the trusted research environment. And this is going to be important because we're able to use, in this case, the business structure data set, the business registry data, to look at the difference in how each locality, the workforce of each locality, or the businesses registered in each locality, how that differs across the sectors and across the country. So this is going to be really important, particularly, as I mentioned, with the social economy. We know that the lockdowns and the pandemic have disproportionately impacted the retail sectors, the tourism sectors, hospitality sectors. So a local authority is going to be able to download this report, and they're going to be able to look at a non-disclosive index of what proportion of their workforce is in those most impacted sectors. And that's going to help inform on the potential impacts or recovery efforts that are going to be specific to that local authority. And then again, that one was specific to the sector-based employment and sector-based density. We also have a synthesis of some of the human mobility reports. So this is coming from openly available Google data. So you can see that we're really merging as much as we can, sensitive, secured data and openly available data to kind of create a general snapshot picture for each local authority by local authority. And that's going to help enable a bit more of a kind of local focused, informed discussion across, COVID, the economy, mobility, and all these different domains. And so now, like I said, we wanted to make all of this openly available. So this is all these profiles are going to be hosted, or they are hosted on the Consumer Data Research Center, the CDRC website. And so these local profiles are searchable for any local authority stakeholder. Could be a researcher, could be a local government worker. All we ask is that you sign up so that we can track registry of who's downloading, but it's a very simple sign up that you don't even need to make any confirmation. You just need to register your email address essentially. And once you go to the front page of the CDRC, so that's data.cdrc.ac.uk, you'll be able to link into our GeoDataPacks site, and that's going to be hosting the location of all these profiles for each local authority. And on top of this, when we're working with open data, the replicable code for downloading the data, cleaning, and generating some of this outside of the SRS is also available on our GitHub repository. And again, this is only for the openly available indicators and data that we've been working with. And you can see this is a bit more detail of the actual platform. So once you go to data.cdrc.uk, you'll be able to go to our GeoDataPacks link, the tab at the top, and you'll be able to search for the local data space profile for your local authority. And once you select your local data space, you can search through all local authorities, and you're going to be downloading a file available with all 10 of those different local authority profiles that are accessible, that are varying for each local authority, and that are synthesizing all the data sets that we mentioned. So these are freely available, openly available for all local authorities. And our aim is that they're going to provide a snapshot of a picture of COVID-19 and economic recovery for each local authority. And just to provide some brief conclusions and benefits of what we're working on. So we know that these subnational or sub-regional patterns can outcome. So really going into a research project with a local focus is very important. So we want to know, what measures and what types of indicators we're working with. So this is important when, for example, a regional level aggregate, a mean or a median, may not accurately be representing the true infection rate or the true density of the workforce on the ground. When we have access to granular surveys, registries, admin data, we're going to be able to, especially if these are national in scope, we can leverage that national scope to the local level. And that's also going to allow us to not only kind of focus and target different local levels, but also make a comparison across local levels. So one of the benefits of these reports is that a series of reports for different localities can be downloaded, and different indicators can be compared consistently across each local authority. And this is particularly useful. The trusted research environments are particularly useful when we want to explore multiple dimensions of the data. So infection rates crossed with demographics or crossed with occupation. Once we get into that level of kind of crossing different dimensions, we're inherently going to get to issues of disclosivity, and that's not going to be available from aggregate research data products. So we're really going to need to be working with the granular level data. And then once we have the ability to work with this secure, sensitive data in the trusted research environment, also merging in openly available registries, we're going to be able to build kind of a comprehensive picture of local analysis for different local authorities, considering not just one data set, but kind of a series of data sets. So the trusted research environment really makes this accessible for the secured level research, but also the ability to kind of include other potentially local research or local data that's going to complement the secured data. And I'll end with, again, the links to where these reports are available. So you're able to go and download these reports for each local authority, again, through the CDRC platform, or more specifically, the GeoDataPlex platform. And with that, I will end our recording here. And I've left my email there. If there's any questions or comments, we're more than happy to field that based on this project. Thank you very much.